In Dreamworks' latest film, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, we get to see the return of a few of our favorite feline friends.
Pray for mercy from Puss in Boots!
We got plenty of new characters, from eager buddies to crime families to some pretty intimidating enemies. All these characters have some sort of connection to each other by the end of the film, so we figured that we might as well rank them. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish Relationships, Healthy to Toxic. As with our other Puss in Boots 2 videos, we want to give you a fair warning that there will be massive spoilers. Starting off, we have the most solid and most loving relationships. These relationships are the healthy. For our gold medal of healthiness, we're going to give it to Puss in Boots and Pero. In all honesty, they have a pretty familiar dynamic, kind of like Shrek and Donkey in some ways, while still having their own unique relationship that is sweet and nice to see blossom. When they first meet in Mama Luna's home, Puss sees Pero as a minor annoyance, who he's too jaded to actually talk to. Before long, Puss agrees to start working with Pero in the hopes of getting to the wishing star. Now, this could have been seen as Puss simply using Pero, but thankfully, Puss starts having genuine affection by the time they and Kitty are making their way through the dark forest. While Puss is more physically protective, rushing in to save Pero whenever he gets captured, Pero focuses more on the helpful and emotional side. This is best seen after Puss's panic attack, where Pero is able to comfort him and help calm him. Afterwards, they talk and Pero gives Puss some advice that he actually tries to follow, showing how much he comes to appreciate Pero's perspective. Although their personalities may clash, there's no denying they still became great friends. Moving on to the silver medal of healthiness, we have Pero and Kitty Softpaws. They are the second half of the team friendship trio, and while they're not as close as Puss and Pero, we don't doubt the love and affection that Kitty and Pero do have for each other. Being someone who wasn't used to having somebody she could trust, Kitty was hostile to Pero at first. Pero, however, took it all in stride, seeing the best in Kitty and immediately wanting to be her friend. After Kitty starts to realize that Pero is just as innocent as he claims, she starts to warm up to him, becoming just as protective of him as Puss is. Kitty tries to teach Pero how to do the cute eyes move, which he's able to use in the film's climax, as well as give him advice. It's great to see Kitty grow to care so much for Pero, in spite of how little she originally trusted him, with Pero seeing her as another best friend. The bronze medal of healthiness goes to Goldie and Mama Bear. When it comes to Goldie and her two bear parents, it certainly seems like she's the closest to Mama. After all, according to the flashback we see in the illusion of the bear's cabin, it was Mama Bear who first came up with the idea of adopting Goldie when they first discovered her in their home. Even when Goldie grows up, Mama still trusts her daughter completely and just wants her to be happy, even if it means one day saying goodbye. While Goldie did still hide her true intentions regarding the wishing star, it's shown that she feels guilty about this and that she never wanted to hurt her mother's or the rest of her family's feelings. It may have taken Goldie some time to realize that she didn't need a human family just because she herself was human, but we feel that she might not have come to this conclusion at all, if not for the strong connection she already had with her family, especially with Mama. Next, we have Pero and the Bear family. After a brief scuffle over the map, the Bear family ends up kidnapping Pero, intending on using him as bait to get the map back. Naturally, while Pero is with the bears, he quickly endears himself to them, getting involved in Goldie and baby sibling squabble before telling Goldie that she won the orphan lottery when it came to her found family, which she ends up taking to heart by the end of the film. The bears in turn warm up to Pero, so quickly that Papa even suggests keeping Pero instead of eating him or just using him as bait. It may only be a quick scene, but we feel it's a necessary one that helps lead into the resolution between the Bear family and team friendship in the third act, but we'll talk about that later. Next are the relationships that, while not completely awful, could still use a bit of work. This is the gray area. Starting off the tier is Puss and Kitty. While they may have separated on good terms at the end of the first film, they have a lot of history with each other since then. Between Kitty's grudge against him for running away on their wedding day and Puss's focus on getting his 9 lives back, they act more like bitter rivals and exes than old flames for the first half of the film. But despite all the arguing, it's made clear that both these cats still have deep feelings for each other. For as annoyed as she is with him, Kitty still listens to Puss when he tries to apologize and even helps him shave his itchy retirement beard. In many ways, Kitty almost seems like she knows Puss better than he knows himself, which speaks to just how strong their connection is. Even the brief betrayal that happens between them after Puss tries to take the map for himself is resolved rather quickly, because for as afraid as Puss is of dying, he just can't bring himself to hurt Kitty again. Add in the fact that these two have excellent teamwork, and you got a case for them still being one of the strongest Dreamworks romances, even with their ups and downs. Next, we have Mama Luna and Puss. Usually, cats and cat-loving old ladies are able to get along pretty well. Unfortunately, this isn't the case for them.
So this is where dignity goes to die.
Given how reluctant he was to even retire in the first place, Puss never really had any strong connection towards Mama Luna, even after she took him in and gave him food and shelter, easily leaving her behind when he first hears about the wishing star. On the other hand, we can't exactly blame him for not wanting to bond with Mama Luna, as while she may have seen him doing not normal cat things like using the toilet or the stove, Mama Luna still insisted on forcing Puss to act like a normal cat, making the experience of retirement more miserable. Really, the only reason why this relationship isn't any lower is because regardless of their lack of any bonding moments or feelings of companionship, there's no real malice found between them. Now we have Baby Bear and Goldie. They, for the most part, fall into a similar dynamic when it comes to animated siblings, often bickering or tossing insults at each other. Goldie is a smarter sibling, while Baby Bear is much more brash and defensive, so it's not surprising that there's so much friction between them. Some of their insults, however, can be harsh, especially the scene where Baby insists that Goldie isn't actually his sister. Despite this, Baby's actually pretty heartbroken when he hears that Goldie plans to wish for a human family, which in turn furthers Goldie's own guilt about her wish. In the end, when Baby is nearly destroyed on the wishing star, Goldie chooses to sacrifice her wish to save her brother, showing that, even with all their bickering and small annoyances, these siblings truly do love each other. Entering the lower half of our list, we have the Bear family and Team Friendship. It's always a fun dynamic when you have a set of characters that manage to go from rivals to friends. Although the Bear family was looking to hire both Puss and Kitty for their map heist, we can't imagine that they were planning on sharing the wish with either feline. As such, we can't completely blame the cats for being so willing to double-cross the bears. From there, it's a constant fight for the map, with the bears even stooping to kidnapping Pero to get an advantage. But as we said, Pero's able to win the bears over somewhat. As for Puss and Kitty, while they may have trust issues, both they and Goldie are willing to put their differences aside to keep Big Jack Horner from getting the last wish, destroying the map together. At the end, everyone parts way on friendly terms, hinting at the two groups possibly considering each other as allies. It may not erase all the animosity they had, but it's still an improvement. Now we have Puss and Death. When Puss and Death first meet, they have very little, if any, respect for each other. Puss sees Death as another wolf bounty hunter, while Death sees Puss as an arrogant, life-wasting fool. Because of this, Death has no problems taunting or psychologically messing with Puss whenever he shows himself, truly believing that Puss doesn't deserve his last life, if only because Death just expects him to waste it anyway. Though Death causes a lot of damage to Puss's emotional state, it's still necessary since it's partially what teaches him to actually value and fight for his life. By the time they clash for the final time, there's much more mutual respect, despite them technically being enemies. Though he acknowledges that he can never truly beat Death, Puss still promises to keep fighting for his life, instead of being careless or always trying to run away from his final fate. While he is frustrated that his hunt ended so anticlimactically, Death is still able to show Puss mercy once he sees that he truly learned his lesson, once again making Death come off more as harsh but fair than simply monstrous or bloodthirsty. When they depart, we're left with the fact that they will eventually fight again, but until then, the fact that they were able to come to a truce is pretty impressive. We finally come to the relationships that never should have been formed in the first place. These are the toxic relationships. The bronze medal of toxicity goes to Big Jack Horner and the Baker's Dozen. On the surface, Jack has a fairly standard transactional relationship with his employees, who act as both his bakers as well as his private army. However, for as loyal as the Baker's Dozen are when it comes to enthusiastically fighting for their boss and putting their lives on the line for his goals, Jack is hardly able to offer this same courtesy towards his men. To say that Jack sees them as less than is an understatement. Whenever he gets one of them killed, either accidentally or on purpose, he has no remorse whatsoever, seeing each of his Baker's men as disposable and replaceable. We don't know if the Baker's Dozen actually want to work for Jack, or if they're forced to do so under an unbreakable contract, but this doesn't make their refusal to actually leave him, or even just try to leave, any less concerning. We've heard of toxic work relationships, and this example of it definitely takes the idea to the next level. The silver medal of toxicity goes to Jack and Puss. Funny enough, while they serve as strong foils to each other and are the film's main protagonist and antagonist, they actually don't have much of a personal relationship. There's no actual history, and they pretty much only see each other as obstacles in the way of their respective goals. The most personal it gets is when Jack is trying to get Puss to give him the map by threatening to shoot Pero in the face with a unicorn horn-shooting crossbow. Other than that, they may as well be strangers. But hey, sometimes that's all you really need for a hero and a villain. While it may not be that personal, it doesn't make the conflict between them any less interesting, nor is it any less satisfying to see Puss, with Pero and Kitty's help, defeat Jack once and for all. Our gold medal of toxicity goes to the Cricket and Jack. While their relationship is mostly played for comedy, essentially being the anti-Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket, it still doesn't take away from just how toxic it is. For one thing, Jack didn't even plan on bringing the Cricket with him, having packed it in with all his other magical items and weapons on accident. To his credit, the Cricket does at least try to be a good conscience, despite his discomfort with Jack. But of course, Jack doesn't make this easy, only seeing the Cricket as an annoyance and not even trying to actually listen to him. When the Cricket has finally had enough, it's seen as less of him giving up and more just him finally accepting what's right in front of him. And really, that's probably the least toxic part of this relationship. The Cricket not being totally blinded by his own belief that there's good in everyone and actually trying to stand up for himself. This doesn't go completely well, as Jack then just flicks the Cricket off of him before going on his merry way. But hey, at least the Cricket is able to get his revenge. Alright guys, that's the list. Let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge more of our videos. But most importantly, stay wicked.